Good morning. I call the Board of the Davidson County Board of Commissioners Thursday, November the 2nd, to order. And we'll start with an invocation and pledge. I will lead that. Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for your blessings that you give to us every day. We thank you, Lord, that you are indeed sovereign and you're under control and you know everything that's happening before we think, before we do it. It's a comfort to us to know that we can ask you for wisdom and realize that those requests that we get will come to be. As we contemplate the business of today, we would ask for that wisdom. We would ask for the discernment that we need to make decisions that not only would be in line with your law, but in line with the citizens of this county as well. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Shore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd like to recognize all of our veterans. So if we have any veterans in the house tonight or today, would you please stand and be recognized?
Buying that 48 grand, man.
We appreciate you. Thank you very much. I'm assuming I've already given you a pen. Is that correct? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
When we get back, you score.
We have a register for public address. If you're interested in speaking at our time for public address, please sign up down here in the front. Mr. Smith has asked that the discussion on possible firearm ordinance be added to the agenda as item 7F. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Have a motion and second to approve the agenda?
Here.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Vote. Is anyone registered to speak?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
All of the votes are in. And that motion carries by a vote of 7-0.
Okay. The items for deliberation, the first one we have is the Board of Commissioners meeting room iPad computer upgrade. Ms. Harris and Mr. Parrish will leave this over.
Daniel's gonna come out. We've had a couple of commissioners ask us that the monitors aren't exactly what y'all thought you were getting. So Joel has put together a couple of quotes for y'all. If you want to move to something different, it is almost time for some new, some of you have iPads that are very old. So Joel had put together an iPad quote and a Lenovo tablet quote. And it's something that you could use to where I'm not the one steering. That's what we've had with some discussion about. That way you guys can go look at different things as we're moving through the agenda. That the original concern was just that the iPad screens were so small that a lot of the times the things that were on there was hard to see. So we do have a quote for iPads. New iPads would be $11,209, but they are the great big, they're the larger screens. They're 12.9 inch, Daniel? So it would be a larger screen, and they come, the case that Joel has coming with them will actually make it a tripod, so they'll sit that way so you can see them. But that way you can sort of navigate around yourself. And then he also got a quote from Lenovo on some tablets that would be more, they're just not Apple products. Let me get to the bottom here. Well, but we're looking for some direction. They were $1,352 a piece. We're looking for some direction from you all as to whether you want to try to move to something different instead of the stationary screens that y'all have right there. Marcus, our guru at agenda.net, has sent me.
I got one to run by you about
a link to what's called a My Voting app.
think I got figured out.
So we're gonna get some training on it, but it could take the place of the clickers. We just need to figure out how that would work. So we could do away with the clickers, download this app on the new device. You guys could do everything just from the one screen. But it's completely up to you. We just put it on, we just had some questions, and just wanna see what your all's thoughts were as far as moving forward, whether you're happy with what you have, or whether you want us to continue to look for something.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
You may.
Debbie, thank you for all that and getting all the information. Personally, I mean, this is good, you know, to a point, but we can't manipulate it in any way. So, if you're on one thing, but I'm trying to research something or look something up, I'm still having to go to my iPad. So if we had one thing that we could utilize, I think that would be great. And if it did away with both of these and allowed us to take it, or if they need to be left here or whatever, but if we could do everything from that one thing, I think it would be great.
We may leave the little screens in here because the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Board both do use them now. But I mean, if you all want to do something that we're not driving in here, that you can actually continue to look, the only thing is, I mean, we'll still use that screen and hopefully you all can see that. But, we're just trying to make it easier on y'all.
So what between the two, do you have a suggestion, or?
Well, like I said, Mr. Chairman, personally, I like the ability because right now, I can see the agenda, and if there's an item, especially when Lee comes up to do his planning stuff, I can open it up and I can zoom in and look when whatever's here is just, it's static and stationary, and I can't. So I like the ability to be able to do that.
You're talking about like either a tablet or
iPads, because several of y'all, I
iPad, so.
mean, the newer commissioners have, iPads are only a year or so old, but there are several of you that have iPads that are several years old.
Yeah.
So we are at a point where, you know, it's like Joel said, we probably need to look at replacing some of them anyway.
It's time for a refresh.
It is time for a refresh for some of them. So, I mean, if we're gonna do it, to do something that you all want.
And the Lenovo product will be a laptop. It'll be a Windows device. It will not be an iOS.
If it could run that app, that'd be a game changer, 'cause then, you know.
Yeah, and that would require the iPad.
Yeah, the new iPad, I mean, the 12.9 screen, it's gonna be a big screen, and it's gonna have the keyboard with it, that it folds up and sits like a stand. So it would be something sort of like what,
Like this.
but it's a lot bigger.
I agree, because a lot of times when they're looking at the document, they're still using the laser pointer, and it's up here, and we can't even.
You can't,
Yeah.
you can't. I mean, we tried to make it easier on y'all, and I think it sort of did, but it didn't give y'all the functionality that you wanted. So that's why we brought it back.
Comment, question? So it'll be attached here, or?
No, it will be something that you all can take with you, like your iPads that you have now. You'll just need to bring them with you to the meeting.
Okay.
Have that app.
New iPads. They'll just be, 12 and a half, so that'd be almost 13 inches.
Yeah.
They're much larger. It'd probably be a
They're
screen,
about as big
about
as
the size
that,
of this. So,
Yeah, question?
Now, like I say, I know my iPad goes off about every 2 minutes, so.
Yeah.
I mean, your
There's not
iPad's
much.
old. I mean,
Yeah.
there are several of y'all that have had them since you came on the board
Yeah,
with
question.
maybe one refresh, so.
But it will come equipped with the,
I think that. I'm
voting app.
Yes, we're gonna get Marcus to do some tutorials on the voting app. I can give you, I've got it actually on this, Joel let me borrow an iPad. And it actually, it shows all the meetings. You pull it, the only thing I can't figure out how to do is the voting, so we'll have to figure that out, and it could be that we just need a tutorial on it. But you can just scroll through the individual items,
I love it. Yeah.
and, well, you can click on them, and it shows the attachments. I mean, to me, it's easier to navigate than what we have now, this app is. So, and it's something that we may have to purchase the app, because they've just given us this to use. But I'm gonna get some more information on that, but we just wanted to gauge your all's interest in moving forward with some new devices and maybe a refresh.
So we can do pretty much what we do now on our iPad up here with the bigger screen.
The bigger screen so you can see.
Yeah.
And we can do a mix and match if some people want iPad, some people want a laptop. There's nothing saying that everybody has to,
Because I think, if
Follow
I
the thing.
remember, I think it actually works on everything.
so.
Because I think that they had made it available to where we would be able to use it on devices, but I will check, I will confirm with Marcus. But I mean, if you all want us to move forward this way, we can definitely look in and we'll bring it back to y'all.
They still make the keyboard for the
Yes, it'll have the
Apple?
keyboard and
Yeah,
the pen,
okay,
yes.
then, yeah,
Yeah, but this quote includes the keyboard and
yeah,
everything,
yeah.
so. Y'all want us to look and bring it back?
I would
Notebook
like to.
rather than laptop?
Yeah.
I like it.
Notebook?
Okay,
Pretty much that.
we'll gather more information, we'll get information from Marcus as to what we're gonna need to do with agenda.net to make everything work. But hopefully this will get rid of the clickers and everything will be a little bit more seamless.
That's a great
Yeah.
idea.
Okay, thank you, that's
Thank you.
what we
Sounds
have
good.
this morning, we tried to make sure everyone was involved in the
Thank you,
conversation.
Yep.
Daniel.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for all your work, both of you. We have a presentation, for accelerant detection K-9 for the DC Fire Marshal, Mr. Ward.
You guys wanna drive? you all wanna
Chairman,
drive the
fellow
car?
commissioners, I'm gonna let John do all the talking. He's put together a brief presentation that updates you on the status where we are with, receiving an Accelerate K-9. John, go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. As Danny said, my name is John Webster. I'm one of the deputy fire marshals, predominantly over the investigations that we run in the county. Davidson County was not selected to receive an accelerant detection K-9. If you may remember, we discussed that back in April. There were a total of 40 applicants. Of those 40, only 9 were selected, and they were distributed across the country. That does not decrease the need that we have for one here in this area. The Fire Marshal's Office was prepared in the event that Davidson County was not selected. In preparation, multiple companies were that specialize in training and certification of accelerant detection K-9s were contacted. During our research, Reliant Investigations Incorporated was chosen as the best option suited for the needs of Davidson County. Reliant Investigation has over 15 years of experience training K-9s and their handlers with a proven detection accelerant detection rate of 90%. In addition to training accelerant detection K-9s and their handlers, Reliant also investigates fires for other companies. Reliant Investigation holds an open contract with the State of Georgia Fire Marshal's Office to train and certify their K-9s and their handlers. They currently have 9 detection K-9s, with the 10th currently in training in California. The benefits to Davidson County are, this allows K-9 Boone to solely be dedicated to Davidson County. Davidson County will be able to determine the availability of the K-9 to outside organizations. K-9 Boone will participate in educational programs for fire and life safety. Boone will provide a deterrence for intentionally set fires. Boone will reduce time spent on fire scene examinations, limiting the exposure to cancer-causing agents. Boone can work longer than 5 years as long as he passes his physicals and the recertification process. Moving forward, Fire Marshal's Office would like to request $15,000 of our PBB funds to purchase and pay for the training of K-9 Boone to be placed on the consent agenda for the November 13th Board of Commissioners meeting. So this is Boone. Boone is a 6-month-old, 7-month-old American field lab that was born in April of 2023 in Wisconsin. Boone is currently in training in California to become an accelerant detection K-9. This is a short clip of Boone beginning his training. I believe this is his actual first week of training.
So how Boone got his name was we had to select a series of names, 5 different names, what we had to narrow it down to. And we sent them to the trainer, and he used each one of those names repetitively, and Boone was naturally selected, and it was kind of odd for this, but Daniel Boone and that kind of deal. He brags about how well this dog is coming along, how he says he's a superhero. He's going to be, what does he call it? Rock star?
Yeah, rock star.
Yeah.
just because he's learned so fast, because he's been in training since the last week of September, and it's the first week of, November, and he's already, this is called, indicating to the presence and holding on scent. As you can see, he's laying down, holding his nose to where he's smelling it. How that helps us is it shows us exactly where we need to collect a sample to send to the lab for examination for an arson case.
Any questions?
I got a couple, Mr. Chairman. You said that this, I forget the name of the group you talked about.
Reliant investigation.
Reliant?
Yes, sir.
They train the dogs?
Yes, sir. He trains the dogs. They will come here and train me as well as the other guys in the office.
And are they in California?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You said that they had a contract with somebody in Georgia, correct? All right. I was thinking there was two different companies, one in California training a dog, and then this company was gonna oversee it.
Yes, sir.
And I'm assuming this is kinda like a police K-9 where it has to be recertified every year?
Yes, sir. So we'll go to, Georgia every year, to recertify for 2 days and come back on.
And is that a national certification and recognized by?
The company called CADA, it's a Canine Accelerant Detection Association.
Okay.
And they bring in, so the gentleman that runs Reliance, his business, he is actually one of their, he's on their board and is one of the certifying officials for them. He will actually bring in a third party to certify the dog, and then he comes here, trains us, and then brings in another third-party agent to certify me as the handler.
Any other questions? Comments? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, you said that, this Boone would be utilized in other jurisdictions as well, if called upon, is that correct?
If we see fit that happens, that's the great thing about us having this dog and him being solely dedicated to Davidson County. We can decide if he goes or does not go. Obviously, as the handler, I would have to go too. But if, Davie County has a fire where they have suspicion and they need a canine, they can call us, ask if we're available, and we can go, and then we make that decision on if we do.
Is there a compensation, policy there as far as if another county calls for you to come and bring the dog, is there a compensation?
No, sir.
We haven't got that far in the discussion as far as, should we or would that be something we'd want to do or look into, and if that's the desire of the board, we'll absolutely look into a fee that says this is what it'll cost if you call for us.
It may be something you want to bring in down the road if you find out that you're being called out a whole lot to various counties, but I was reading that.
The program we was headed for in the first round, it was, we didn't have a lot of say-so. It was, we're providing you these things, and when you call, when we call, you go. And it doesn't matter if it's, Murphy or Manio, and if they do a national call-out, you may get on an airplane and fly across the country. The great thing about this is it costs us a little bit more up front, but it saves us money in the long run. It saves us approximately about $5,000 a year over the course of 5 years, because we know where we're going to recertify. We're going to Georgia. He drives down, stays overnight in a hotel, comes back the next day, versus flying to Washington State or California or upstate New York, where they go to the other program, they move their certification process every year, and then that travel cost comes with it. And then there's the unseen savings of having to go, how many times you go somewhere else in the state of South Carolina to provide that service and the cost to the county. So we can control that cost by saying, yes, we can go to Davie, Forsyth, there are surrounding counties, or in an extreme emergency where there's nobody but with just the consensus of the board and the management to give us that permission, and we can go a little farther away, a couple of counties over. But Boone's ours. It's Davidson County's dog. It's not controlled or dictated by anyone else but Davidson County.
Any other questions? Comment?
Comment, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Boone's a pretty dog, but Boone's a tool.
Yes, sir.
And that tool can be used to, track down on arsons and to keep our citizens safe here in Davidson County. And as much as Boone can be the face of the fire marshal's office and help kids understand what we can, there's also a deterrent there.
Yes, sir.
Once everybody knows that we've got, Boone on staff, maybe they'll think twice before setting a fire.
Yes, sir.
So I appreciate y'all bringing this forward. That's all I've got, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else? How often y'all use it, accelerant dog now?
It's variable, because you really can't predict when someone's gonna be available or use an ignitable liquid to set something on fire.
Like on the restaurant, floor they had down at, Main Street, what, do y'all have to call one in from someplace?
Yes, sir.
And how much does that cost you?
Huh?
Doesn't cost you anything.
No, sir. The problem where it may be is there may not be a dog available. And as you may remember, in the spring when we presented this, there's 2 dogs and one of them's retiring out, and they're actually not available anymore as right now. So right now, there's 1 dog within 2 hours of us that may be available, but if they're not available, we don't get a dog.
Does the SBI still have their dog?
So the SBI had several. I think most of them have retired out, and they're actually getting one within the next coming several months, but it's gonna be, I believe, in Elizabeth City. So it's of no real use to us, honestly.
I got a quick question,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman. Like the fire he's talking about in Lexington, do we investigate that or the city of Lexington?
So we run a fire investigation task force. That's the city's jurisdiction, and they led the investigation. We actually went and helped put the fire out, and they asked us to stay and assist with their investigation, and so we actually participated very heavily in that. As y'all remember, we have the Matterport camera. We actually ran that in that fire for them to document the fire scene.
Okay, but they are in charge of their investigation?
Yes, sir.
I didn't know how
We
that
assist
worked.
quite a bit.
Yeah, okay.
Any objection to putting this on the November the 13th
No.
consent?
I think it'd be a good idea.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
As Commissioner Cheryl had indicated, maybe, whenever y'all get all this, put together, you could get, if you're gonna have dogs going outside the county, that you have something in place for them. Thank you very much. Davidson Works, Workforce Development Programmatic Review. We want a response from our BOC. I believe you have something at your place, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tim, I might need your help in this. We'll see how many questions we get. We received notification from the state on a program review for Davidson Works. As you know, we don't provide direct services for that anymore. PTRC does. Tim, they've asked for a signature from the lead elected official, which is the chairman. So I put it on the agenda just to give you guys notice that we have a response here for you. It's largely about costs related to a youth program that's run out of the college over there. Those were the findings. We've answered the questions and then also reminded them that we're no longer basically in this business directly anymore. So unless y'all got questions for Tim about the details of that, which we answered in the letter, I'm asking for permission for the chairman to sign this letter as the lead elected official and send it on to the state.
Good with that.
Questions?
Good.
Are you comfortable with it?
Yes. Yes.
Based on everything?
Yeah,
we've
Tim
done?
knows, Tim's one of the last remaining members of Davidson Works that knows, I had him write the letter because, again, we had staff that left, and we've got staff that worked here, and then we had a tragic accident a tragedy happened a few weeks ago, with a staff member, Pam Walton, as you all know. So I asked him to look into it, because he worked over there for 15 years, so he knew all about it and helped me write this letter. And again, it's largely about this youth program over at the college and some hours thresholds getting exceeded. No policy was violated. I'm not sure exactly what state had on their mind here, but we answered the questions, and we're gonna send them the letter. So, and again, remind them that we're not in this business anymore directly, we're in more of an indirect role, so.
Let Tim come up, we need to let him speak, I think.
Yeah.
You all said you were good, and I'm okay with that. If you have a specific question, I did more digging on this than I really wanted to, but as the county manager said, there were no policy violations, and, there were 4 findings total, but you have to remember, this was over 3 program years. I don't know why the state was that far behind on monitoring, whereas, you know, in their report, they had 2 findings from program year 2019, of which we responded to and moved on, but this was 3 program years, 2020, 2021, and 2022. But yeah, we just want permission to submit this letter, and we're asking today because it's due by the 9th. So we'd like to just roll on with it, if you are okay with it.
Good deal.
Good job, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Yep. It has a motion and second. We don't normally approve these. Is that consent agenda time? Or you
No, 'cause Tim, like he said, they're asking for it on the 9th. Our next meeting's on the 13th. You're right, we don't normally conduct business, but this was our only meeting we had to get this approved.
Okay.
So with some
I'll make a
consensus,
motion
I'll
that
just
we-
have you sign it, Mr. Chairman, and move on.
I make a motion that we,
Motion made to send a letter. Second. There's a second. Any other questions? Cast your vote.
All of the votes are in. And that motion carries by a vote of 7-0.
All right, next is an update on GS 160D changes, on-site wastewater exemption affidavit. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bo, are you here? And I know we got staff from Environmental Health, Darren, Randy, if y'all wanna come up too. Y'all can help me with this and entertain questions. I thought the board needed to, Bo called me, I don't know, several weeks ago, said we got an affidavit here that's been presented to me by the state and with some changes to, how the patrons are gonna interact in the services with the wastewater. So, given everybody's, you know, higher level alert with that service, and also I think it's gonna affect some of the building community as well. Bo's gonna get some questions. I wanted them to tell you guys about it. So this is more for information, cause it sounds like it's coming down from above, but I wanted y'all to know about it. So Bo, hit it.
and if I could interrupt right before you start, Bo, I also sent out, I had Lillian to send me a detailed explanation, and I had that forward to all of you. Also, y'all should have seen that, just so you also know about that as well. Thanks, Bo.
Morning, well. The North Carolina Building Code Council, created an addendum amendment that goes with, General Statute 160D 1110, and it's a subsection H1 that became effective October 1st, where they created an affidavit. That subsection says no local government may withhold a building permit under this section where the project does not propose to increase the design daily flow or wastewater strength of the existing system, and the property owner submits an on-site wastewater existing system inspection exemption affidavit. The property owner shall affirm that any modifications will meet the local and state on-site wastewater system setbacks requirements pursuant to General Statute 138, 335. They created this Appendix H, issued it out statewide. It became effective, October 1st. Do they have a copy? I have a copy of things.
They do.
In some ways, in a lot of ways, it's gonna help citizens a lot circumvent a step in the process when it's used as it's intended and designed. It's gonna be great. The concern that we wanted to make everyone aware of is, one, of how that will help the citizens, but two, in light of it, there could also be certain creative scenarios that come as a result of it, that does leave a responsibility with the property owner and the applicant of that affidavit, that there will be an education piece as they learn how to use this, that they will have a responsibility, a burden with that if they misuse it. We think that'll be few and far, and I think a lot of more good will come out of this But
Man.
there is some negative on the back end of it that could be result of it. They've come, to give a little more explanation on how that, I'm assuming could affect your records in some ways, possibly. As well as there's a potential, another rule that's gonna become effective that this will shake hands with on January 1st. We're not quite there yet. It's an administrative rule from their board that'll speak to all projects. Since October 1st, we've received several of them. We've taken this Appendix H, and put a Davidson County letterhead on it because we started receiving them from other counties with their name scratched out and our name handwritten in, and to make it official and make it proper for us, we've kind of made this appendix ours. We didn't change any of the literature, we just made it official for Davidson County. I'd be willing to try to explain the best of my ability, any questions any of you might have and how we're going about this, if anybody has any questions.
Bo, if I can, I just want to cut to the chase. It's got an upside and downside potential, let me call it that way. Upside, it's got a chance to pick up the pace on some stuff. Downside is if somebody makes a change and they didn't bother to tell us about it and these guys go out and ding them after the fact, it could get there's where the phone call could come. Hey, they're dinging me, but rightfully so in some sense down the road. Does that make sense? They didn't adhere to the rules. So I think that's what Bo just wants everybody to realize is it's got the potential to pick up some pace. Is it cuts a step out?
And I guess dinging means that somebody adds another bedroom to a home and they try to get by with, is that what we're?
Or they encroach on that setback line, but say in their form they don't. And say down the road, if they sell that property or whatever, that burden of responsibility follows them, even if they don't own it. So if that next person inherits a headache off something they weren't aware of, we go back down this paper trail where this person provided this affidavit, they have to own that responsibility even after they've left that property if, for whatever reason, they've misinterpreted how to use this appendix, and it leads to a problem.
That's actually why I like the affidavit, because if it does come up a year or two later, we pull out the piece of paper and go, you signed this, saying there was no issues, and now there's changes. So I actually do kind of like the piece of paper.
And it's explained in the affidavit that this follows them as well from?
It does,
Okay.
it does, yeah, and with this affidavit comes a great responsibility if it's misused. That could result in cost to somebody as well as time and frustration that would potentially find itself to your desk, is why.
But the liability follows the person who signs the affidavit, not the county.
Right.
I think that's the good part of it.
Yes, because when they circumvent that step, they won't have any record of anything other, nor will we, than this. But the affidavit says we can't deny them a building permit if they go this route. And that's their testimony to saying they're circumventing that step.
Right.
And I think what all this kind of stemmed from is like, say, somebody buying a new mobile home, and they was waiting 3 months or 4 months to get our on-site wastewater folks out to just look at a hookup, correct, of the new mobile home to the...
I would think scenarios like that in
Right.
volume statewide have probably spoke to this finding itself on the desk at the Carolina.
Right, they didn't change anything. It was a 3-bedroom mobile home. I got a couple of those calls, back during this time,
We got a particular scenario to give an example of, and I'll be brief. New development, house only a few months old, homeowner's putting an addition on it, didn't think he needed a permit, inspectors in the neighborhood every day, he stopped, friendly courtesy call, hey, that does need a permit, come see us. As it goes around, him not knowing the rules, doing his own work, his submittal showed an encroachment on his septic lines. But as things go full circle, now the paperwork comes back all of a sudden that he's in the clearance, and really by the paper trail, we can't deny that if he's following that, but if he sells this home 2 years from now, hypothetically, if there were a problem, that's still gonna follow him. Should it ever surface, and it may never, but there'll be those times that it could.
Any other comment?
I just got one question, Mr. Chairman. Bo or, Darren, whoever wants to answer this. Is this gonna be an open gov, so are we gonna have this digitally? Because I just don't want you know, how sometimes paper trails get lost.
If I understand correctly, it is the building inspector's department's responsibility to let this option be made aware to the public. It is something that can be accessed on OpenGov now. We have a copy of this appendix with our seal that's on our website now.
Okay.
Is that how it was handled before, or did it come through you guys, Darren, or?
It would've came through us first, but now, you know, our state officers, from their point of view, is saying it's under building inspection, we don't mess with this.
So if somebody comes in and says, I wanna reconnect,
If they want to, then we will.
And the affidavit even goes as far as having a paragraph that tells them that, the property owner may at his or her discretion consult with an authorized on-site wastewater evaluator certified by the state of North Carolina on-site wastewater contractors and inspectors certification board or an inspector as defined by the statutes to locate the on-site wastewater system and verify the setbacks prior to executing the affidavit. So it gives them the option to have an avenue to do their research, to feel good about the affidavit before they do it. So there's really no way out for them if they do that. They wouldn't be able to claim ignorance and not understanding it, because it's pretty cut and dry how it's supposed to be applied.
so how would that work if they come to you, Darren, first? Would there be a fee involved, and how would that work?
There's like a fee for really,
I'm just gonna keep calling Puma.
so to speak, for authorization or whatever. We would go out and verify, locate, issue or not issue based on what we find,
What is the cost for that fee?
so $80.
$80? That's fair enough, yeah.
Once it comes to you first, can they withdraw their request after they submitted a request to you?
If they find out there's an affidavit in the building inspection part, is that what you're?
You said, instead of going through the affidavit process with the inspection department, some of them may decide to go directly to the environmental. They come to you first and then say, hey, there's an affidavit process I don't have to submit to. Can they back out from you and go? Okay.
Even if they use these guys or someone to help them verify the information, and even with a fee associated, I think the benefit would be, if it all works as they would intend, is they still save the time on the downside of having to go through the building authorization process. As far as the time frame, they get to expedite. That's my impression, that's the whole intention behind that appendix.
What was the downside to this, Mr. Smith?
Other than somebody, like Bo said, somebody, signs the affidavit and then there's a change along the way, and then it won't get caught till at some point in time in the future.
It wouldn't be a problem till it's a problem.
Till it's a problem, and then, you know, that's when commissioners tend to get calls saying that we're holding them up, or that when they've signed the affidavit and they've made some kind of legitimate change. So it's nothing to worry about. It could happen, it could not. I don't know. It's likely to happen, but it's also likely to keep the speed up too. So it's got way more upside than it does downside, but y'all need to be aware of the downside.
For $80, I'd much rather that fall back on somebody's shoulders besides mine.
Well, here's the problem, and I wanna ask this question. They had to wait several months.
Right.
For a reconnect, just like they did pretty close if they was getting a new septic installed. So my question is, do we have a method to where we could put reconnects, do a 10-day turnaround on a reconnect or something, instead of putting them in line for a,
That's always been our goal, we get this quicker because they're just faster work and unusual, so to speak.
but some of the calls I got, they was waiting 3 months they got a new trailer there and they was waiting 3 months to get it connected, so.
That's because we had two guys covered.
I get you, I mean, I got it, but.
County, but no, numbers.
But again, from my understanding at the time, they just fell in line behind us, everything.
They're one of those repairs are our quickest options to do.
I mean, I think people would bypass the affidavit if they could get it done in 10
You're right.
days, if they knew 10 days or something,
And price people do these, and we're probably within, I want to release right now, 5 to 10 days, something in there.
On the reconnect, we down to like 10 days or something, awesome.
5 to 10.
Great job.
Yeah.
Repairs are a week or less.
And I'm like you, Commissioner Shores, I believe if they could do that route for 5 or 10 days, they'd pay their $80 and.
Absolutely, but I get it, if you have to wait, 3-4 months.
And
My only guess was that statewide, there was pressure of the same scenarios that led to legislation creating a form of relief of some sort is where that Appendix H is bound to have come from.
Moving forward, that puts the onus on the home buyer to make sure that, they're checking to see if an affidavit was filled out, if everything is truthful with the person that they're purchasing the property with, so they don't inherit a problem. So I can see where that could come up in the future, but like Mr. Yates is talking about, if we can get these people in these, buildings, that's.
Well, the downside is nothing more than we're already facing to begin with, so you're not really, creating another problem. It's something that's already here, and by the addition of the affidavit, you're gonna remove a lot of that.
We'll do our best to educate the public,
Yeah.
the ramifications and responsibility that comes with it and understanding it, but in the event that it gets misinterpreted.
You can't make them tell the truth.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
So one other question, I promise I'll quit. So this will be listed on the GIS as well, right? This affidavit, it'll be put on there like the septic permits and all are?
When you say GIS, I don't understand. It'll be on OpenGov.
Yeah, but when you pull up the GIS now or, and look underneath the property card, it shows any septic permits or when they was done originally, that kind of information.
That's a good question, and I can definitely look into that and find out. As far as right now, I don't think it
Okay,
is.
well, I think it needs to follow like it does with the septic.
Commissioner Yates, I think I can help with this. Darren, I think what the commissioner is referring to, is this gonna be, in Laserfish? When it's backed up?
That's a building inspection's question.
All our permit documents typically go through.
But what
Okay.
he's referring to is our linkage to our Laserfish with our septic records.
Right.
Show up.
Because if I buy a piece of property, I wanna know that that affidavit's been attached to that property, so I can go to the health department and say, I wanna pay the 80.
Blind spot for the public if it's not.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that way I can do it before I buy the property. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna go pay $80 and give these, and get it checked before I buy it.
Laserfish, ask Joel if there's a way to link.
Might be
to-
able to do that to where the inspections records and all that
Right,
just kind of merge
right.
together.
Daniel
Be
might be
Look
able
at
to.
that.
Basically, any kind of paperwork that's official and probably needs to be in
Out of
that
that property,
area.
yeah.
Right now, inspection records are not on there, so that, I'll get with Joel and Daniel about that.
That's very important, I think,
Yeah.
to me.
It is, I know we had at least one issue where a guy bought a house and inherited somebody else's mess, and nobody knew anything about anything, so.
And that would also cut down on a lot of, public record requests that Bo gets for copies of inspection records. Realtors do that every day. They send him a record request.
Yeah.
I think I've hit you with, about 30 of them here recently?
Yeah, there's a steady flow.
Yeah.
It has on here, a motion and second. Does this need to be approved this time? Or
It's
can
not
it
really
be
for
put on the
approval,
next?
this is really more for information.
Huh?
This is really more for information, it's not really an approval.
Okay.
It's-
Just
Good job.
information. I got you. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Darren and Randy, appreciate you guys. Y'all done a good job turning. things
Amazing
around,
job.
so
Thank y'all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bo.
I'm gonna allow the vice chairman to, do this next one and possibly the firearm. I got to, step out for a bit.
Okay, we're going to 8E, approval purchase of sale agreement with Puma.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. So it's been a long time coming. I think the board's well aware of Project Puma. We're not gonna be able to approve the purchase today. Chuck reminded me yesterday, we're gonna have to call for a public hearing. So that's basically what the item is today, to call and set the public hearing for November 27th. You've got in front of you the draft agreement with an Exhibit B map. The highlights of this agreement is, Puma will buy more or less, plus or minus 47 acres, which is what we're referring to as Lot 3. At the business park, at $50,000 an acre, so that's roughly 2.3 some change $1 million. There's also a wastewater fee there associated, at $12 a gallon for 7,500 gallons of wastewater being used. That's $90,000. It'll be due at close. If they use an additional 7,500, it's $90,000 thereafter till they get up to their top number that you guys have already approved, which was $40,000. They won't end up using $40,000 in all phases. This total investment on this project is somewhere in the range of $280 million. I'm rounding up, with about 300 jobs. And the close to this is a little bit different than we normally do because I want to turn your attention to the exhibit. We are working on a survey out of there now to try to get the Lot 3 lines kind of established in the boundary area. And then the dirt piles is what's circled there in the middle of the page. So you guys have already approved the engineering, and I'm working with those folks. It's actually Josh and Clay's folks, Ashley, well, not Ashley, what, Allie, Carmen and King. And so they're designing the plan now to kind of get the permit squared up and the move of the dirt piles to basically Lot 1, which is on the other side of the park, where there's a lot more earthwork that needs to be done for the future to make those lots more presentable for sale. There is one piece to this that I am waiting for today on a GIS map. I found a power easement going down one side right here. I'm using my finger. Where his tree line is, that is no longer there no more. Duke Power has moved it to the back side of the property. And so I'm going to refresh this map and send it to Puma's land representatives to let them know where that is. And then the boundary line survey gets met. And then there's also a road, a sewer line road. You can see that little white line right there that gets to our EDA pump station on the back side of the property. I need to make sure this, Chuck's got language in here that all easements fall to us, but I want to make it a little bit more clear. And I didn't want to inundate with her with changes and then come back with another map and we get them all confused, that road's going to be part of this. So because we got to have access to it to get to that pump station. So it's this, well, I say all that to say this agreement's going to morph just a tad, and hopefully that's it, because Chuck's done a lot of work on this with their folks, their attorney, land attorney folks, and everybody's in agreement on this. So we're all, as far as I know, no more changes from here. At this point, we'll call for the public hearing, bring it on the 27th. We'll have it wrapped up at that point in terms of this easement language and what's getting settled. Hopefully know a little bit more about the dirt pile moves soon, because we'll be bringing you guys a bid package to get that moved, with you all knowing, I think they would like to start probably shoveling dirt or moving dirt, if that's what you will, sometime in the spring. And so if we can get this thing bid in December-ish time frame and be ready to go, hopefully we'll get a contractor. It shouldn't take long to move it, especially since we're moving it within the park. And we can be done out of their hair.
I have a question. Do you know how much dirt's gonna have to be removed here?
It is,
about 60.
It's like 60,000 cubic yards. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
They come out the pond in the back here.
Okay.
And they
It was partly off the road.
Some of it
Yeah.
off the road when it was built, so.
Okay.
One pile's pretty clean. One pile maybe have a little bit of rubble in it and things like that. We can use that for berms, and, Mr. Yates knows a lot more about earthwork than I do. But Lot 1 needs some TLC anyway. It's got some lowland part of it. It's not level. So if we want to get it kind of leveled out, it'll be a much more, in other words, we need the dirt. Puma wasn't real excited about that. We had those conversations with them, so best proposition is just get it out of there and we can use it.
We voting on this or just?
No, we need to do the motion is to go ahead and call for the public hearing. So we had a long-winded there, but I need this public hearing for the 27th. And run the ad so Debbie can stay on top.
Can I get a motion? Yeah.
I'll second it.
No, so can I get a motion? You need a motion?
Yeah. I'll second.
All right, everybody cast your vote. Turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman, with, 8F, as soon as, we get the results from this vote back.
And that motion carries by a vote of 7-0.
All right, thank you. Discussion on possible firearm ordinance. You wanna lead that off, Mr. Smith?
Yes, sir. I think it was about a month or so ago, we had a concerned citizen give some of you guys a call, and I talked to her as well about, her neighbor had, shooting firearms near her home, in a berm, not just randomly at the home, but near a berm. And so at that time, what you got before you is that email that I sent, I think that day or the next, I think it was that day, October 2nd. samples of some places that I pulled what I call a firearm discharge ordinance, with the bullet points being basically the distance from dwellings and businesses that I found inside those different ordinances, and whether they required a berm, whether the berm had to be certified, et cetera. So at that time, I think several of you I had conversations with, I kind of made a promise we'd put it on a Thursday morning meeting and have a little bit more talk about it. I'm gonna turn it over to the board, because what staff's looking for out of this is, I've got the sheriff here for more details, and if you wanna talk to them, is staff's looking for, you know, kind of the next steps, whether we're gonna do anything at all, or is some of these things and these items of these other counties things that we would consider. So I'm gonna turn it over to the board, Mr. Chairman, and the sheriff's here for any other conversation. He's aware of the details of this particular case, but I think this comes up periodically amongst, several of you here about it, so.
Mr. Manager, before you turn it over, can we pull that up on the screen so everybody can see what we're looking at?
Pull what up?
The address, is that?
I don't remember the address.
It's in here.
Debbie can pull it up, maybe off his email. 168 John Ernest Road.
So do you want me to
Like the
pull it up on
Google Maps.
GIS? Or
Google Maps.
Come on up, Chair.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And I've also brought, one of my firearms instructors, Deputy Kearney, with me today for any further questions on safety or anything. He's very good.
Sheriff, what do you think about this while she's pulling that up? Have you been out there, or have you seen it, or?
Yeah, I mean, and we get these complaints a lot, Commissioner. You know, with much given, which the Second Amendment, I don't want to infringe on people's Second Amendment rights in no way.
Absolutely not.
But when much is given, and that is much that is given to us, much is expected, and we've got to do it in a safe manner, because every time we don't, it makes us firearms owners, it makes us look bad, and it puts a black eye on this Second Amendment right that we all have.
What would you think would be the, distance? There's several listed in here.
And I have not seen this, what y'all have discussed.
Well,
I
there's,
hadn't seen the list.
100 feet, there's 300 feet, there's, 500 feet.
I'm gonna.
Henderson County here doesn't have a distance
Not seen that,
restriction.
Sheriff.
It just says, rather cannot discharge in a careless manner. I think that would be up to the discretion of the officer going to investigate.
Yes, and board, like I said, I'm James Kearney. Just quick, a little bit about my background so that y'all know I'm not just somebody standing up here. I have dealt with this for more than 30 years. I've managed 2 shooting ranges, to include helping with the Montgomery Community College's shooting range on a school facility. So we have dealt with this. I've dealt with this quite a bit. Commissioner, you're exactly right. We need to be careful on regulating people's Second Amendment right. And the distances you're talking about, we can't just put a distance on anything. If you do, then you need to specify BB guns, 22s. Are we talking about 50 cal, 308, hunting rifles, shotguns? Are we talking about skeet shooting? And so the kind of generic regulation, like the commissioner just spoke of, you got to do it in a safe manner.
Yeah.
Do you have enough property that the projectiles don't leave your property? You know, these are the things that you have to look at. There is a state regulation that for shooting ranges, that the noise ordinance doesn't apply to a shooting range. So that's the only state regulation that I have been able to find on that. Your Wildlife Resource Commission has some rules on hunting as far as like shooting over a roadway, and they have a rule that you have to be 150 feet from a residence to hunt. But that's nothing to do with just shooting, target shooting. The big thing to look at is it being safe, and are the projectiles leaving their property? You know, if you own 5,000 acres of land and you're shooting in the middle of it, well, you can shoot any direction you want and you're not gonna hit nobody. But if you own an acre of land and you would like to shoot, as long as you're doing it in a safe manner and it's impacting the ground and the projectiles are not leaving your property, well, that ought to be legal for the resident as well.
Absolutely.
If you have 10 acres of land, but I'm skeet shooting and my shot is traveling over to somebody else's house, well, that's negligent. I need to have enough space that my projectiles don't leave the property. And there's a lot more to this than just saying, I think we need to adopt this. It's, what are we going to shoot? There's a big difference between shooting a .22 and shooting pistol cartridges in your backyard for fun and somebody breaking out a .338 Lapua or a .50 BMG that are perfectly legal to own and shooting in their backyard.
So what was gonna be the recommendation of the sheriff? What, you got a recommendation?
Thank you, Governor.
Right now, I mean, with nothing, we go and we make recommendations. I mean, I don't know that I have a per se yardage or anything. We recommend something for safety now, when we go out to these calls. Only until something happens can we do anything. We have a law for careless and reckless with cars. We can stop it before anything bad happens. We don't have anything now to give us any teeth to stop it other than recommendations right now until something goes bad. I mean, I don't know, can you think of a distance? I don't know of a distance. Maybe something in the wording of the berm of stopping the projectile from getting out of off the residence, or some of these compact neighborhoods, it's just ridiculous not to be shooting in the neighborhoods, but it amazes you what we see out here. When there's house, you can't do it, so it's something we're going to have to put our heads together.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You could.
Ms. Harris, would you scroll up just a little bit? Or can you? Do you have the ability to do that? All right, zoom back in. That's fine. So I had a conversation with the lady. This red dot represents her property. They've bought, I can't remember what she said it was, several acres right here, basically this whole giant field. The gentleman that's doing the shooting is right in here, and there is a berm. And he is shooting into the berm. She feels it's not a legal berm, and with 30 years in law enforcement, I don't know that there's a legal definition of a berm, but the gentleman is shooting right here, and he is shooting in this direction. She says her children gets on their golf cart and they go out in here and they ride around, and she is very, very concerned with ricochets. I've tried my best to explain to her that if he is, without being out there and seeing what the gentleman's doing, if he is shooting into a berm, there's a very low probability of a ricochet. But if it does, it's either going to go up or down, left or right. But she is very, very concerned. And I understand her concern. Her kids is out here. He is shooting in that direction. And like the sheriff just said, and Deputy Kearney said, we would hope that somebody would be very cautious and everything else. But, she's concerned about her children and them playing and so forth.
Okay.
But I wanted y'all to see, this is the berm right in here. And he is shooting directly towards her, minus the fact that he's shooting into a berm.
Yeah.
I also asked her if she had been down to speak with him, and she said no. Apparently they had some bad blood in the beginning. I guess he was out hunting on her property, and that caused a little bit of a spat. So she has not actually been to speak to him. She said she's called the sheriff a couple of times, and as the sheriff has just explained, he really has no avenue to.
Any other comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I do. I'm not an expert at all. And I like hearing from a combat veteran who we have up here, who has shot more rounds of ammunition than I could probably afford to buy in my life. So I appreciate the work you've done on this, Commissioner Shores. I also respect the expertise we've got before us. In saying that, the only ramification in my mind to this project is, I'm not gonna put a restriction on anything as far as a berm, whatever like this, but I think we have a duty to the safety of our citizens to say, okay, well, you can't discharge in a careless manner. Well, who's gonna determine what's careless, what's unsafe? The experts. So we shouldn't do anything that limits the sheriff's authority or your staff's ability to go out there and make that determination. Are they doing it in a safe manner? And also it allows you a chance to say, hey, change these couple of things right here and you'll be fine. So it doesn't infringe on somebody's Second Amendment right. And I think the closest one that I could be informed with is what Henderson County has. It doesn't restrict anything as far as requiring berms or talking about the neighbor or anything like that. It specifically says cannot discharge in a careless manner. And that determination comes from the officer who's called out to go to investigate. So that's the only one I could be in line with. Anything else I'd be against, but I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Did you look
Any other comment?
Mr. Chairman, if I may? So similar to Commissioner Elliott, so I actually like Randolph County's. Theirs was broad enough and simple enough in that it spoke to, let me read it here. No person shall discharge a firearm in such a manner as to allow the projectile from that firearm to impact upon or travel across the property of another without the consent. And so I think, for starters, we're probably going to see more calls and issues like this as we move from, again, what was a primarily agricultural rural county to a more suburban one. So this will only increase. And I would assume that the sheriff's office needs some teeth behind, again, an actual ordinance to be able to enforce, right? Because as of right now, it's kind of a pure recommendation on your part. The other piece, and I think we all up here want to make sure that we respect, of course, the Second Amendment rights, but in this case, and I think the other cases, what we'll see is we're really kind of dealing with two rights that are coming into conflict with one another. You have, again, the Second Amendment rights, the right to bear arms, use your property, but then you have, in this case, the lady who is concerned about her own property rights. And so, though the rights are different, they're not unequal. And so I think we need some kind of arbitration for these sorts of things, where you have two rights that are conflicting. And so, all that to say is, I think Randolph County's example, or something like it, a derivative of it, may be best, in that it doesn't say, oh, it has to be, 150 yards away. That could be difficult to prove. But in this case, and in other cases, I think whatever we pass from an ordinance perspective, if we go that route, I guess what I'm saying is I don't want us to use this one example to make an ordinance. Like we kind of have to think there's going to be other cases beyond this that are going to be very different. And so it's going to have to be applicable to those as well. But it makes a great deal of sense to me to pass some kind of ordinance, especially with the amount of, again, urbanization we're seeing in this county.
All right. I'd like to speak to Commissioner Mizell for a second, Mr. Chairman.
You have anything?
I don't.
Go ahead.
The only thing I'm concerned about with giving a gun owner the right to be able to safely discharge his firearm without the consent of a neighbor is that neighbor, you've got some neighbors that they wouldn't give you consent if you had your own, state-of-the-art firing range inside, So we have to really worry about putting the power of the law into another citizen's hand when that power consists of this board and our elected sheriff. So I think that with this section, it is up to the elected official as the sheriff and his expert staff to determine if the person is discharging this firearm in a safe manner, in a safe distance, and we leave all the other stuff out of it. Because if we get the he said, she said in there, we could be in a real trouble.
Well, I think to your inquiry, which I think is fair, one of them I think spoke to, and I don't think it was the Randolph County one, having some kind of consent in writing. So if I give you consent in writing that you, Chris Elliott, can come on my property and fire a gun, then there's kind of that trail of evidence.
Well, I think the one you're talking about, Commissioner Mizell, is...
Wait just a second. We've got two people that hadn't even talked.
I'm just still in the listening mode.
Okay.
Because I agree. I would like to hear, or I'd like to possibly put it in the hands of the sheriff to say,
Absolutely.
I think we need to do this, this, and this, you know, and that be brought back to us as a talking point, as a plan, you know, and then we could say back, no, there's no way that we could do that because it's taken away too many rights.
I agree with that.
Mr. Gates?
I think what your ordinance read, if I'm hearing it right, is you can't shoot across somebody else's property without their consent.
Right,
Didn't
right.
have anything to do with shooting on your property.
Right,
It's
right.
just I can't shoot across my neighbor's property
Right.
without their
Right.
consent, you know? So that's,
Yeah, I agree with that. Don't shoot over my house. Yeah.
Wait
No,
a second.
no.
Commissioner Shore.
Well, Commissioner Yates, were you finished?
yeah, go ahead.
That's all I was just gonna make a point of
that's fine.
clarification, just what Commissioner Yates just did. But I 100% agree that the people that really should be doing this is you and your deputy sheriff. Bring us something back that you're okay with, that you think meets the guidelines and everything else, and then give us 2 or 3 options, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
That's what I think.
And I think the more conservative we go, the better.
Absolutely. I'm not for taking anybody's gun rights away at all, because Lord knows I've got plenty of them and I love to shoot them.
I didn't
The
know
one
this was
thing
gonna
that-
be on today, or we'd been a little bit more, but we.
One thing that we might be in trouble with if we don't specify is now you're gonna lay it on the deputy as he goes out there to say whether it's safe or not. And if you're gonna have any kind of penalty for the people, if they are not doing it in a safe way, that puts a whole lot of pressure on the deputy to go out there and make a decision. If you specify berms, if you specify distance, then it gives the deputy something to go by whenever they go out there. They don't have to step it off or anything, but they can definitely make it. I'm not saying we do that, I'm just saying that I think that's a consideration. I don't know that if I was a deputy and I was walking out there and he was, somebody was shooting, it wasn't going across somebody else's property, would he be, shooting in a way that would be unsafe? I mean, it's just something that's arbitrary, and it's something that I don't think is gonna result in y'all getting a fine out there for $500 or $300 or whatever it is.
I think key's gonna be keeping it on your land. Anything, any projectile has got to stay on your land, and it's your responsibility as a gun owner to make sure that happens.
I agree with that.
Mr. Chairman.
Agree.
Mr. Chairman, for clarification of what I understood now, just saying, I was thinking across the street, you know, getting the neighbors before, but shooting across their land is never okay. Anybody else's land other than yourselves is never okay without consent. I totally agree with that. But the way I read it was the neighbor across the street has to tell you can shoot on your property, and I would never be okay with that. So, sorry, I misunderstood that.
That would never
I'm
make
in
it,
total
that would never
agreement
make
with
it
you.
one of our agendas.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I would certainly agree, especially when you got an expert firearms instructor here. But I do think whatever you come up with, you also need to run by our legal staff. I think they need to be an integral part of this whole deal. Projectile, you know, that's subject to if you charge somebody, you're gonna have proof that projectile came from that weapon and from that berm.
That's gonna
or
be the
berm
hardest
was in
That's the hard
adequate.
part.
That's the
Yeah,
hardest
that's when you gotta have the legal end of it. But I'm certainly agree that the man who's in the know needs to be, certainly be a part of this process.
And I know one here in the county that shoots pistols into a metal, backstay. There is absolutely zero way to know whether or not that ricochet is gonna be in your land or not. It could go to the left, could go to the right. So you're gonna say then, if you go out there and they're shooting into metal, how do you deal with that? And I'm not trying to bring up objectives necessarily, but I just wanna try to get as many as I can. During dove season, whenever they're out shooting, their load's probably not gonna land on your lane. Cause I've had them rain over to the house and you feel the shots come over where you are. I mean, they're not in any danger to anybody, but they're not on your land. So I don't know how you deal with that either. Just thoughts.
May I ask one
Go
more
ahead.
question? How many calls do you probably get in a year's time about this, about shooting on, and I'm worried about my property, et cetera, et cetera?
I guess we could run a call list, but just off the top of the head, we probably get at least 50 a year, I'd say.
Yeah. I just thought that might be, that tells you right there that it's a concern, of your citizens. So,
One of the things, one of the things you could do if you've got the 50 is, what could you do as a law enforcement, vehicle to, satisfy those folks that were shooting? Some you can't, as somebody said, but go ahead, sir.
Just to add to what Commissioner said, education.
yes.
I've been doing this a long time, and I can't tell you how many people, once you educate them and tell them, hey, this is what they're doing and this is what's going on, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. To just add to what Commissioner Shore said, there's no rules on berms. But there's there's suggestions. They suggest that you use a 1-to-2 ratio. So for every foot you go up, it has to be 2 foot wide. It has to be twice as wide as you go up. Most people don't adhere to that, but that has to do with just suggestions, so there's no rules. And talking about the projectiles, even in self-defense. Now, in self-defense, so you use deadly force to protect your home, and you shoot the bad guy, but the bullet goes through him and hits the kid across the street, you're gonna be charged with manslaughter. I mean, you're still responsible for that, so there's no exceptions for deadly force even to that. The key is it's gotta stay on your property, and that goes for not just shooting, that's anything. Blowing grass. You can't blow your grass on somebody else's property, so.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Would your deputies and staff, would they feel, good about having a situation where you have to make a decision of whether or not the person is, in violation or is gonna be fined or?
It'd be like any other crime. We'd have to investigate it. If we can prove it, then we can prove it. If we can't, we can't, but.
I understand, but how do you prove? Is the guy that's shooting out there, how you gonna prove he's doing it in a wanton and reckless manner? Some would be obvious, some would not be. Like this gentleman that you've got right here is actually shooting into a berm. Well, when you go out there, is he safe or is he not? And if he's not, if it can escape over the top of his berm and affect the other property there, there's no way to know whether it's doing it or not unless you have him shoot. And if you have him shoot, he's not gonna shoot in a position that's got the top of that berm, he's gonna shoot the bottom.
Sheriff, can I help here? I'm not trying to interject, but the Randolph County ordinance doesn't care whether you're doing it reckless or not. It just says you can't do it. You can't shoot across somebody else's property. It doesn't render a judgment about your behavior doing it. So that's why that's why I sent these 5 ordinances, cause I pulled them for the reasons. Wake County's is very restrictive, 900 feet. Some of them say, as Commissioner Elliott pointed out, I think Henderson's is the officer gets to go out there and figure out whether or not this was willy-nilly or not. But Randolph's is kind of peculiar because it doesn't care. It just says you cannot and it even defines a firearm as a weapon in which will expel a projectile by the action of an explosive. So that gets rid of bow and arrows. It's specifically for guns. So I noticed that, and it, now it does write off self-defense, although I know if the bullet goes out and goes somewhere else, that's a criminal matter, and that's between you and the judge. But it says, and law enforcement, animal control is exempt from this, obviously, and defense of your property. So I just want that. That's why I pulled these. Is there anything, if staff's looking for kind of direction, if y'all want us to continue on doing this, maybe we got something in some of these that we can already take if that's the board's liking.
I think it's pretty simple. You write on there that you cannot shoot in a careless manner or across any other person's property line, and that's it, I don't see why it needs to get that difficult.
I agree.
Yeah.
So careless means I go outside on New Year's and shoot up in the air 20 times.
Yeah.
Cause what goes up comes down.
Well, I know, but Randolph took the stance of it comes down your property, it's your problem.
Absolutely.
If it goes over on something, the careless piece is, they just wrote the careless piece out and said it doesn't matter to us if it goes on somebody else's property, careless or not, accident or not, without consent, you violate this ordinance.
Yeah, but if you see somebody shooting New Year's Eve, that's careless. You don't know whose property it may be going on. Saying that, just my thought, but I get the property line part, but again, careless.
And it'll make you think, if you have something you can stop them with, it'll make people think before they act. Is what we're hoping, that they'll take that responsibility seriously, that they've got something that can do some major damage.
You could also, if it's a first-time offender and it's pretty questionable there, you can also issue a warning ticket. First offense.
We always use discretion. You were there.
Yeah.
Discretion is in our pocket.
You're gonna get the real deal now.
And we're not wanting to pick. We're just wanting to make the county safe. And as we are growing, our county is growing. And as we grow in houses and residents, we want them to be safe.
Yeah. And go ahead.
I think, and the sheriff will tell you this, and so will Deputy Kearney. There's nothing worse as a law enforcement officer than walking out to somebody's house and saying, hey, have you been shooting? And have absolutely nothing to do, even if he says, well, yeah, what are you going to do about it? So if they're going to go to these calls and this stuff, they at least need something. But I agree with Commissioner Yates and Commissioner Mizell. I like what the Randolph County one says, because I love to shoot too. But I try to keep everything on my property, so.
And I like what Deputy Kearney said, it's an educational process too.
Absolutely.
That's part of our job, is to educate people, not to throw the hammer down. We don't want that. We've got, we want to make it safe for Davidson County and give a good reputation for us firearms owners. And people like to take advantage of shooting and being proficient.
I think the main thing as far as both people are concerned is, as Commissioner Mizell said, whatever you pass has to make a muster so far as those people who are receiving the complaint, that the whatever you have in place is a deterrent. And if it's not, then it's not going to be much to put in place. So we need something to determine when people are in violation, but at the same time, we don't want to infringe on a whole lot of people's rights. You go out there on Hill Everhart Road, and that's right in the middle of where people hunt. And there's, I don't know how many things they got out there, 14 or 15, 16 houses. They use one driveway. You know what I'm talking about? They're just bunched up. Well, if they shoot anywhere out there, they're going to shoot on him. They're on the top of the head. So, it's a difficult situation, but I think, with some of them that you've talked, you've got some ideas of some things, and you can work with our manager and come up with what you feel like is a couple of alternatives that you think would solve the problem that we're gonna have, and then bring it back and let's take a look at it. You can run it by our, attorney to make sure we don't get in trouble with that as well. Does that sound reasonable? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Sheriff, you can have my copy too, I've got these. We'll get together and
Thank you, Sheriff.
all of us and Chuck and work through, take a look at them and see what you think. Like I said, I pulled some that I knew are not gonna, Wake County's is very restrictive, as you know, so you're not gonna, that's not.
Just don't
we
be very
definitely-
restrictive with it, okay?
No,
We're not there.
I ain't gonna-
I wanted y'all to see that
Yeah.
there's people out there doing 900 feet. and
We
there's
appreciate
people-
your help, sir. Thank you very much.
Well, as Deputy Kern said, well, I mean, some of them's got footage, but various weapons carry and shoot different ranges, you know? So,
50
to me, the footage is not worth a hill of beans, really. Those short distance.
Go ahead. I think if you look at some of these things that we looked at, the more dense the population, the further the distance is that you can shoot. And, we're getting to that point where we're gonna have more of these on tour. So if we can get that done.
Subdivision popping up everywhere.
You know, Wake County, you know, the density is, you see why theirs is so restrictive. I mean, I wouldn't be happy with it. But, because of the amount of people that live in
Yeah.
the county.
Motion to go into closed session, Mr. Chairman?
There's a motion made and to go in the closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
Verbal. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? If you're opposed, you can sit. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And
Who made the second?
Mr. Fry.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the board considered one matter in closed session. It was a real property matter, and the board gave the county manager direction for further negotiation for acquisition. Thank you, that's all I have.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Hey, Joel, when you get a second, I'd like to